Hello, I'm Marcin Bużański and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Now, Bangladesh is facing serious political change. Following the ouster of the previous Prime Minister, the nation is preparing for an interim government and later on, hopefully, elections, which will lead to reform and to the return of democratic standards. At least that's the idea. But we need to delve deeper. We need to understand why this happened and also what changes could actually take place within the next couple of days, as the situation is developing very rapidly indeed. So in order to guide us through the arcane mysteries of Bangladeshi politics, we've invited Marcin Bużański, Director at the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation at the Collegium Civitas. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, and I'm glad to be here.
So people often say this or that event was not on my bingo card when something unexpected happens out of the blue. So was political upheaval in Bangladesh on your bingo card?
Well, I think we can say this about so many places in the world in recent years. International affairs have taken definitely a bingo turn. I would say no, that kind of rapid change has not been expected in Bangladesh, although several signs have certainly been on the table. I think we should definitely look at the economic situation in the country, which has been deteriorating in the last couple of years, definitely since time of COVID and since the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, which spiked the oil prices, where we've seen also inflation. The growth in Bangladesh has come down from around 8-9% before COVID to around 3%, which in a very impoverished society is felt very strongly. Of course, all of this has had an impact on the popularity of the Prime Minister and trust in the government. It is a very young population. At this point, we're reaching around 20 to 25 unemployment rate among the youth, which is of course very, very high. So we're having a lot of factors that contribute into raising tensions. On top of that, we have been seeing we can call it authoritarian creep or a decrease in democracy standards. Sheikh Hasina has been seen internationally as a democrat, in a way having a history of struggle against the military rule in the country, but gradually she's been taken on a very tough position. She's been jailing opposition figures, limiting the scope for democratic dialogue. So we've been seeing more and more move to centralization and autocratization of power. So I think all of those things in combination lead to the events that we're seeing today. But I don't think anybody expected they will evolve so quickly, erupt so quickly, and with the effects that we're seeing.
And the effects include violence, over 400 people killed, and also concerns from all around the world. Let's now take a brief glance at a statement from the US State Secretary Antony Blinken concerning this situation. Now a video should be playing back, or hopefully will. If not, we'll be moving on to our next question. Seems to be some sort of technical issue. We've actually got the statement from Mr. Blinken, so let's take a glance at this.
With regard to Bangladesh, we're monitoring the situation very closely. I would just say that any decisions that the interim government makes need to respect democratic principles, need to uphold the rule of law, need to reflect the will of the people. We, for our part, take very seriously the safety and security and well-being of American citizens, of our personnel. We went, as I think you know, to order departure of our non-essential personnel, and of course we'll be watching this day in, day out.
So with such concerns, A necessary question is how serious is the situation, and also how stable is it? There have been reports, for example, of attacks against members of the Hindu minority. 90% of the country is Muslims, but about 10% is actually mostly the Hindu minority. Sometimes the local population would actually help their neighbors when they were being attacked, so it's important to emphasize. Nevertheless, do you think that we might still be seeing unrest despite now the prospect of an interim government forming?
Well, it is a possibility. The intergovernment hasn't really formed yet, and what we've been observing in the last 2-3 days is actually a very turbulent process where clearly the military, the head of armed forces, who advised and helped really Sheikh Hasina to leave the country, was making a statement that the military, that the armed forces would take on the role of leading an interim government, which was met with a very abrupt reaction from the protesters, from other political actors, and continuing on that path could certainly lead to more bloodshed. So in a way, the military was forced to reach out to Muhammad Yunus and accept his role as a caretaker. But to what degree they'll allow a smooth transfer of power, smooth elections, stabilizing the current situation, that remains to be seen. I think a lot of international pressure will be put on the military leaders and on all political leaders in Bangladesh to calm the situation down and to follow democratic process rules in choosing the next government. But also we have to remember that there's a situation where the military backed down from providing security on the streets because they were ordered to shoot at protesters before. Police has almost withdrawn from the streets. We've been seeing pictures from citizens of Dhaka trying to help to steer traffic because the police has been gone. So it's quite possible that nobody wants to step out the line now, watching what the situation will be. That, of course, creates possibilities for violence based on crime, and some of this could also relate to the Hindu minority, like you have mentioned. But this again, this is a situation that can be stabilized if the next steps with the interim transition, the arrival of Muhammad Yunus, the position of the army, Muhammad Yunus trying to get back the police to work, working also with the opposition party, the now freed Khaleda Zia, the former prime minister and major opponent to Sheikh Hasina. If they all can get together and calm down the tensions in the country, that will be important. And I think one more important part will be ensuring that especially the younger population has a guarantee that this infamous now quota system for members, for workers of the administration, will be turned down. This was one of the big triggers of this uprising in the first place, which was an existing quota system that allowed relatives of the ruling party de facto to take on almost half of the administration jobs, and this was one of the reasons for the revolt. That has been turned down by the former prime minister, but the courts brought it back again a few months ago, and we've seen an increased opposition to this decrease. So this will be also something where a clear message will need to come from the interim government. We are changing this. This is not coming back, and I think will be one of the stabilizing factors. But
of course, what kind of political system can we expect to emerge here? Because previously we had a party that was trying to promote a secular front, so to say. At the same time, it was being accused of promoting members of the Hindu minority. To some extent, this could actually account for the violence against the said minority. But now with the Awami League, the name of the former ruling party, out of the picture, at least for the time being. What do you think is going to change? Do you think, for example, that secularism is going to partially be eroded by a willingness of the majority of the population to include elements, at least, of religion in the way the country is going to be governed, given that 90% of the country are Muslims? Or is it not likely to be a major risk? So do you think that it's going to move towards basically what we perceive as being this sort of democratic liberal model, or are there any threats around the corner, possibly?
Well, I think that the risk of religion taking a front role in politics is not that big. That might shift a little bit, but I think the key issue really will be the relation between the key political parties, the military, and any kind of more technocratic transitional groups. Because if we look at the situation, the prime minister has fled, Sheikh Hasina, but her party, the whole structure which has been established for decades and been in power in the last 15 years, is still there. And that apparatus is going to fight now extremely strongly to hold on to as much as it can in power. And it remains to be seen whether the military tries to dismiss these groups or try to sort out some kind of a power sharing arrangement, which then will be reflected on the electoral process. The country has really seen two families and related parties governing for since its independence, with a brief hiatus of, well, not brief, but a hiatus of 10 to 15 years when there was a military regime in place. So the country doesn't really know different systems. Those kind of two parties that are shifting. They function in a parliamentary democratic system as such, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't expect a new constitution coming out of this process. I think rather the case is to go back to enforcing the existing process and not abusing them like we've seen in the last year. So I think
incremental changes. Let me ask one quick question. The former government was accused of basically eroding sovereignty at the expense of influence from India. Do you think that this influence is going to wane now?
I think India has a very delicate balancing game to do. It might wane for a little bit, although we've already had comments from Muhammad Yunus that India is the most important neighbor and partner to Bangladesh. It's simply too much of a powerful country to be ignored, and Bangladesh needs to balance out the relation with India, considering its international position regarding the influence of China, regarding the crisis it's facing constantly with the influx of refugees from Burma, from Myanmar into the Rohingya, and this is also a situation that could need support, and India here is to provide a helping hand. And we can see this simply from the fact even that India doesn't want to host the former prime minister. She has just reached India, but she's not going to be in exile there. She's most likely going to move to another country, because India wants to show that it wants to work with the next government closely. So I think that that influence is still going to be there, but of course it's going to shift a little.
So naturally, there are still many unknowns, and we'll be tracking this situation as it develops. For the time being, Marcin Bużański was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight into the matter.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Jan Szerwiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.